Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trey Strelko, joined by Adam Eaton. Welcome in to Sons of UCF Live. Adam, hello.
Trace, hello. Great to be back. Big thanks to Eric Lopez for holding the fort down for his last week. And we get the pleasure of talking about UCF Oklahoma this week, Trace. I can't wait.
Not that we don't appreciate you, but we
Yeah.
really know how much you do behind the scenes to make us look as
You're
good
gonna make
as
me blush,
possible.
Trace. Yeah. A lot of buttons to hit back here. Yeah.
Well, you used the bye week as a little bit of a reset. How are you feeling now? You've talked about the season at this point, 3-3 for the Knights, 3 straight losses going into Oklahoma. You talked about it on the pod, had opportunity around the kingdom to chime in a little bit. Where are you at now, getting close to this game?
So if you told me we'd be 3-3 before the season, I wouldn't be surprised, right? And so to be 3-3 at the net of it, I go, okay, like I can talk myself into a way that's a possibility. Where I'm concerned is how we've gotten to that 3-3, right? I think a close game at Oklahoma State, which we were in and we lose, and I think we all said, hey, you know what? Kansas State. That's a good team. You know, they beat us, and that's a good team. The Baylor loss obviously was backbreaking, and then Kansas, it just never really clicked. So that's really the concern, Trace. 3-3 personally, I go to myself, all right, like I see it. I would have loved a conference win in those 3-3 standings. But it's the way we've lost that's got me a little bit concerned about where this team's at mentally right now, because you lose a heartbreaker to Baylor, you lose really an early one to Kansas. You know, where are they at mentally? I think that's where I'm concerned for this team.
The bye week comes at that halfway point, 3-3, but then you got to go to Oklahoma with all of the storylines that we're going to talk about over this next hour. Couldn't have found a more challenging team to face on the road.
Yeah, it's a juicy one, right? Obviously, we've got the, revenge game. We've got Dylan Gabriel and Jeff Levy, who obviously have some feelings about UCF, and certainly they may have some, some things to think about. You have Gus Malzahn, who's certainly been raked through the coals of the pressure cooker that is the Orlando media and fan base over the last couple of weeks. You got JRP, who's trying to get back healthy in play and cement his legacy. There's a lot of juicy storylines, and not to mention Oklahoma's ranked number 6 in the nation, and so that's another daunting task as we approach the game on Saturday.
For those that watch around the kingdom, and we thank you for doing that, you're more behind the scenes, and we have the provocative question. Who does this mean more to JRP or Gus? What's the impact here? You didn't weigh in. What are your thoughts there? The bigger game for which of them?
I think it's Gus. I mean, look, I understand, Eric's position that JRP, he needs to find a signature game at UCF, but JRP is going to be gone at the end of the season, right? He's going to move on to his next venture in life. He's going to be really successful in whatever he does. The kid's a great kid. Gus is going to be around, and this is going to be one of those seasons that you look back and say, okay, where are we at? So I think this means more to Gus to try to get this team right, to get all 3 phases. I mean, JRP really only controls one element of what he can do. He's not playing special teams. He's not playing defense. That really stops at the head man. So I'm going to say this is more for Gus, and this is a game that he's got more at stake to sort of prove and maybe prove the doubters wrong that say it's passed him by or he can't get this team right. This is an opportunity for him to kind of put up or shut up and really do what it is that I think we all hope that UCF can do as a team this week. Again, JRP is going to be fine. He's going to play his part on the one phase of the game, but Gus has an entire team to look after. That's why I think there's more on his shoulders than JRP.
Well, let's hear from Coach Malzahn and what he says he's looking forward to now in the start of the second half of the season.
Kind of getting back to the basics, getting back to who we are offensively, defensively, and special teams. I know it's been really good for our coaches, which usually that's the case, because you get so wrapped up in your opponent and scheme. And for the first time, you can really look back and you can watch every rep on all 3 phases. There's some glaring things that we need to improve on that we're addressing, which will give us the best plan moving forward. I'm excited about the second half. I'm going to bet if you ask most of our players, they feel the same way. It was kind of one of those really be able to push pause, kind of refresh, regroup. Like I said, I still think we have a good team. We just need to play good football, and I think we're ready to do that.
Now, Coach said most of our players. Why not all of them, Coach? Did you hear that? Was that just a little slip by him? I want them all excited to tackle this second half of the season. You know what I want to see from them Saturday? And I hope we're not to the moral victory portion of the schedule here. I want to see fight from them in a way in which I don't feel I saw it against Kansas.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I agree with Trace, and it's one thing to say, hey, these guys are gonna, they're gonna rebound, but they're gonna face adversity, right? There's gonna be something that happens in this game that's not gonna go our way. We're gonna give up a touchdown, maybe there's a turnover, and there's a penalty, and I think that's the part where we haven't responded really well when things like that happen. And at Kansas, I was really looking to see how would we respond when that happens, because we're coming off a tough loss at Baylor. We're going to get hit in the mouth at some point. How do we respond? And I think there's just an attitude, a toughness that you want to see with this team, that you want to see them, buckle up the chin strap and compete, for lack of better words, right? And I agree with you. I want to see that. I want to see how they respond, because something's not going to go their way this week. How do we respond? Do we respond and answer back, or do we slowly start to self-implode and fold and have self-inflicted penalties like we did at Kansas and like we did at Baylor? So that's what I want to see, is how do we respond when something of adversity strikes our way on Saturday?
We heard Coach Malzahn say that there's a good team here. They can't make those mistakes, but the mark of a good team would be not making the mistakes, but then responding when you do make mistakes. So I think if he's saying there's a good team in there, and maybe that's not a win at Oklahoma, but they've got to limit the mistakes, reduce the mistakes, and when there is adversity, as you've said, they got to push through it and have that fight all the way to the end, because coaches and players have said they've still not played a complete game.
Yeah, play with an edge, right? Play aggressive. I think that's the part, particularly in defense. I don't think we've seen an overly aggressive nature. I feel like we've kind of just been hoping the running back falls into our arms and we can tackle him. And let's try something. Let's be aggressive. Let's play with an edge. If the guys we're playing don't have that edge, Gus talked about this week, hey, we may think about some other guys, position switches. I mean, he's hinting at some stuff, right? I don't know what that looks like, but if guys are out there that are not playing with that edge, then find the kid that's going to. There's going to be somebody on the line who's going to want to play that way. I say find those individuals. Let's play with an edge. Let's get aggressive. Let's get a little nasty at times. Look, I know we're talking penalties. I'm totally fine. If we want to send a penalty to send a message to somebody, let's do that. Let's not jump off sides for 5 yards. But if we want to establish our physicality, let's go ahead and do that. We haven't seen a lot of that this year. I'd love to see that on Saturday, particularly if that comes against a guy wearing number 8 in red.
So some injured players returning. Ricky Barber announced by Coach Malzahn as well. We're expecting to see a healthier John Rice Plumlee, who approached the podium during the Monday media availability, full leg brace. He even joked about he's collecting them. He's got about half a dozen of them. A little more now from him on how he's feeling.
After Kansas, you used the phrase snap, crackle, and pop. Have
Sure.
you heard any other noises or sensations?
No more Rice Krispies going through the knee, so that's good. I'm thankful for that.
I love that soundbite. I do wonder just how healthy he is. Can he do what he does? Let's talk about this with our guest, our first guest of the evening, former longtime assistant coach for UCF football, Paul Lounsbury. We welcome Coach in. Coach, good to see you again.
Hey, Trace. Good to see you, Adam. Good to see you, too.
All right, we'll go back to Coach Malzahn's soundbite about the reset. How much can a reset matter? Is this team at 3-3 and what we've seen, especially over the last 3 games, is this what they are? Or do you, from your experience, think a reset can really make a difference?
I think it can make a difference, especially when you've had a couple of tough deals like Baylor and Kansas. I think it can help you get over that. And I've been to every practice the last 2 weeks, and I've been very impressed with the way the coaches have worked on trying to correct the mistakes that they've made and the players' reaction in a positive way. And they're fighting their tails off. They're practicing hard. And I know that you and Adam talked a bit about the Kansas game, but, in the second half of that game, in the third quarter, we had 3 drives for 75 yards and touchdowns in a row. And that's not an easy thing to accomplish. And I think that shows you that the players were fighting and playing hard, and they hadn't quit. And they continued to play hard the whole game. it's hard to win a game when you have a kickoff return for a touchdown against you. That's worse than a turnover. It's hard to win a game when you have a punt return for a touchdown against you. That's worse than a turnover. And yet we had both of those in that Kansas game. And I think that's what really turned the game into a different game for us. And we've got to be able to avoid those problems. And like you both have said, we can't beat ourselves. We have to cut out those pre-snap penalties. We have to eliminate turnovers. And I think we've got a good football team. I really do. We got to show it against Oklahoma. It's time we show it, and the players know it. And they've worked awfully hard this week on getting better. And our tackling, they worked hard on tackling. They worked hard on everything, really. But it's been really pleasant for me to see the positive attitude of both the coaches and players. It's easy for the coaches to get down on players and be negative. That's kind of what you do as a coach. You have to be a little bit negative because you're correcting all the mistakes. But you also have to add the positive. They have to know you care about them, and our coaches do, and the players know it, and they respond very well to that. And so I'm really pleased about that.
I'm not in a position to question medical staff. I just know what I see. I know what I saw of John Rice Plumlee at Kansas and his limited action. And I saw him this week walk up to the podium with that big leg brace. Part of his game, right? A big part of his game is his ability to run around and make things happen. From what you've seen, how close do you think he is to being the JRP that can be a difference maker?
I think he's 100%. Now, I don't know if the brace is going to inhibit him at all, or whether it's going to be a problem in any way. The biggest thing when you have a knee injury or any kind of injury, especially to your legs, is taking that first hit after you come back and realizing that you're still sound. And I think that it's a psychological thing. And I think that's kind of what happened to JRP in Kansas. He got hit and he got that snap, crackle, pop, and he wasn't sure, and I think the coaches were really smart to realize that was what was happening to him and got him out of there. But I think he's 100%. He is a leader out there. He is a guy that busts his gut all the time. He looked fast again running in practice. So I think he's ready. I think he's really good, and I think he's 100%. And I think that Timmy McClain also responded well and has played well the last 2 weeks in practice.
Coach, something else that Gus Malzahn said during that clip was that they had time to watch every rep over the last couple of weeks. This may be a naive question, but are coaches not watching that kind of stuff week to week? What is different about a bye week and watching every rep? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, you go back and you kind of self-scout your previous. You don't have time to go back. You watch every clip and you grade the players, of course, every time. But you go back and now you self-scout and see what your tendencies are. You don't have time to do all that when you have another game the next week. So now they go back and they do the self-scouting, maybe can find out if they've got any tendencies that were inhibiting their play. Maybe find out if maybe they hadn't realized that this guy wasn't playing as well as he should be playing all the time. So I think there's a positive thing to going back and look. And I think that's what he meant when he said looking at all the clips, is to go back and self-scout.
Well, he also said in that clip, Coach, that there were some glaring things that were wrong. I without divulging state secrets, you've seen more football than Trace and I combined. Have you seen anything? If you were kind of advising Coach, if you watched that same film, have you seen anything that you said, hey, we've got to improve in these one or two areas?
Well, I don't have to tell him because he knows we've got to tackle better. Everybody knows that. We've got to tackle better. I think we have to fit with our front seven in the run game better. But we've got to make tackles when people get in the open field, and we've missed a lot of tackles. And I think defensively, that's where we're at. Offensively, we can't self-destruct. We can't have that crucial penalty, even if it's just a 5-yard penalty. We can't have that, especially pre-snap penalties. Those are just foolish penalties. We can't have those kinds of things. So,
We hear this a lot, Coach. We hear a lot about fitting on the running game and run fits. Can you explain what that means and how is it that we can't quite get that right? What's causing us to not be able to fit the run, as coaches say?
Well, defensively, you have every gap on the offensive field assigned to a particular defensive player. A gap is the one between the center and guard. B gap's the one between the guard and tackle. C gap's the one between the tackle and tight end. D gap's the one outside of that. And you have to have somebody fitting in each gap to fill that gap on the run. And those fits sometimes, especially when you get double teams and really good offensive lines, they can get up and disrupt those fits. And that's what's happened to us a little bit. Another thing is experience and quick reaction of secondary and linebackers to fill the gaps that they're supposed to get to before that lineman can come off and make a play. But I think so that's what I'm talking about, run fits. But I think that a lot of times we've been there and just haven't made the tackle.
We've heard Coach say this week that you may see some different faces. And I guess as fans, you think, well, if they've played better in practice, we would see guys now. Well, what can you do going into Game 7? I know it's always competition and guys are fighting for playing time, but what does that, when you hear him say that, what do you think that translates into?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Trace. It's competition, and that competition is opened back up. You'd like to have, for example, an offensive line that works together all the time and has the same faces in there all the time, because communication is a big thing. Same thing in the secondary. That communication is key back there. But if you have it open to competition and somebody steps up and outplays the guy that's been in front of him, I think you have to reward that. So I think that's what they've done in the off week. And I don't know that you'll see a lot of different changes, but I think the competition has been there, and maybe guys that were playing are going to play better, I hope.
We've talked a lot about the identity, both on offense and defense, at first half MVPs on both sides of the ball. What do you think is the identity of this defense so far through 6 games? I mean, we have a lot of negative terms that we're talking about, from tackling to inability to stop the run. Do you have a sense of that identity, that vibe on this defense?
Last year, I felt like the big problem we had was we weren't able to cover the pass very effectively. This year, I think our secondary is a lot better. I think people have been able to run on us because we faced 2 really good running teams, Kansas State and Kansas. I think we have to get our fits better. I think that's what it comes down to. But our identity is to stop the run first. And we haven't done that very well. But I think if you talk to any defensive coordinator in college football or pro football or high school football, they're going to tell you we got to stop the run first, because if you don't stop that run, just like we didn't stop it against Kansas and Kansas State, they just run it down your throat. And pretty soon they got 8 and 10 minute drives and you don't have the ball. So we have to stop the run first. And that's where the fits come in. You have to be able to fit on the run game.
Coach, you mentioned this, obviously, special teams, you give up points on special teams. That's a backbreaker. How, as a coach, do you coach up the errors on special teams? A lot of these guys are obviously playing offense and defense. They have other primary responsibilities. Take us kind of inside practice. How do coaches address special teams to really kind of shore that area up, particularly when, again, UCF had a couple of gaffes the last game against Kansas?
I think sometimes you simplify. You try to simplify things so that those guys that are playing on the other side of the ball don't have quite so much to think about. So you cut it down a little bit, you simplify, and try to be execution perfect. And I think that's the way you attack that kind of thing. And bad tackling is bad tackling, whether it's on defense or special teams. And we've had that problem, but they've addressed that. And I hope that they've made the changes. I hope the players have made the changes that the coaches have been drilling them in, because they did all the right things in the tackling drills the last 2 weeks.
Obviously we've got tape out there now, right? We have 3 games in the Big 12 where, offenses have seen, or I'm sorry, offenses have seen what the defense has done or not done. As a coach, how do you counter that? Do you show your guys the tape of like, hey, this is where we messed up and here's what we have to do? Because, one of our friends on the show here, Andy's talking about, the guard tackle, guard halfback counter. We haven't stopped that all year long. How do you combat that as a coach?
Well, you do show every mistake that's made, and you go it through the fine-tooth comb, and you grade every player on every play, and you explain the mistakes when they don't get a good grade, and then you put a clip together and show that clip to them, and then you go out and work on it on the field. I mean, film is a great teaching tool for football, so that's used really heavily. But all you can do is Coach Holtz once said, we can make our football team better in 3 ways. We can hire better players, we can fire the players that aren't playing very well, or we can coach the ones that we got. So right now we have to coach the ones we got, and I think that's what our coaches are doing. They're doing a great job of that. So I think we're going to have a big improvement. We're playing a great team. Oklahoma is really good. They are a run team first. They want to run the ball. Well, they average out of 66 plays per game, they average 40 runs. But their production is in the passing game. 26 passes per game, but they got out of that's 2/3 of their offensive production. So I'm not sure that they're as good a running team as Kansas or Kansas State. I hope they're not. But I think we'll be better against the run too. But we're going to have to stop the run first, and I think our secondary is much better than it's been in the past, and I think we can deal with the passing game too. But we got to stop the run first.
Well, when Knights fans last saw Dylan Gabriel in the bounce house, he wasn't as prolific on the ground. Now he's running the ball and getting first downs. Of course, he's a Heisman contender. They're number 6 in the country. If you were coaching up the defense this week, what do you tell them? What do you do to try and disrupt? You're not going to shut down Dylan Gabriel, but what do you do to make his life more uncomfortable for a couple of hours?
I think there'll be a plan to try to attack him in a passing situation with maybe a different twist or a different wrinkle in the blitz package. I think in the run game you have to have somebody assigned to him and maybe put a hat on him hard when he does run the ball. And I think if we can do those things, that gives us a better chance to stop him. You won't stop him completely, of course, but I think we got a good chance. I'm maybe overly optimistic, but I'm excited about this game because we can shock the Big 12 in this one game. And I think our players know that. And I'm excited about what I saw at practice.
I'm not at the point where I want to embrace moral victories, but more fight, competitive, limiting mistakes, playing the full 60 minutes. Maybe they're not as good as Oklahoma, but you want to leave this game, win or lose, encouraged over the next 5 games.
You're definitely right, Trace. We got to see improvement, especially in the foolish penalty area, missed assignment area, and that'll convert to third down production. It'll convert to stopping the run. Those things will show in a positive way, I think, if we're able to do those things. So I agree with you. But I want to win that game, and I know our players want to win it, our coaches want to win it, and we can win it. And that's the thing. We just have to make them earn it. Whenever they have the ball, we got to make them earn it. Whenever we just can't give them things, and we can't give them turnovers to make it easier for them.
Well, when you said that they're not as good a running team as Kansas and Kansas State, that might just mean 300 yards on the ground instead of 400. And that'd be improvement, but that's still not good.
They're a good team now. They'll have some really good players, and they pass protect very well too. So, but I just think that I think our guys are in the right place mentally. I think our coaches have done a fantastic job in difficult circumstances of getting them to that point. And I think you're going to see a better better result in the game. And I think it's not moral victory. I agree. I'm not for moral victory, but I think we'll all see the improvement regardless of how the score ends up. If they do the things the right way, we'll see the improvement.
All right. Remember that about 3:00 on Saturday, everybody. Coach Lounsbury, thanks for being back with us on Suns Live. We look forward to talking with you in the weeks ahead.
I appreciate what you guys do, and I enjoy talking with you guys a great deal.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Coach.
Coach.
All right, Adam, I'm going to be honest. I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged when I talk with Coach. He's out there in practice. I feel, I'm not saying I'm predicting an upset or anything here, but I'm encouraged. I just want to see him play better because I think better play at Oklahoma is going to translate into better play against West Virginia and down the line.
Yeah, I want to see them play up to their potential. I think we all know that individually we have some really talented players on the team on offense and defense. I want to see them live up to that potential and execute and make the plays and do the things we all know they can do. And I walked into this show tonight, Trace, at 7:50, thinking like this thing's over. 8:26, Coach has got me ready to go. Maybe there's a chance, Trace. Maybe there's a light there that we can, Gus Malzahn, the lights dim in the locker room, and he gets everybody around and says, "Hey guys, no one believes in us." And he does one of those Al Pacino every given Sunday speeches, and we burst out of the tunnel and we shock Alabama or Oklahoma or everybody. I don't really care who, but maybe this is our opportunity. I don't know. I feel good.
You know the challenge of this, right? You're doing multiple shows a week. We're trying to
recognize
be fair, but we can't just fall apart in doing this show every week. You got to have a little bit of hope and think there's light around the corner there. It's really challenging. I lived through 2015, and you don't know every week is going to be a loss, so you have to hold on to some hope. And maybe, as Coach says, this could be. We see upsets. We see them all the time in college football, and they're coming off a bye week and they beat Texas, and they think maybe they take us a little lightly.
Yeah, look, I think what we said, we have to play a very almost close to perfect game. Mistake free. We can't give them anything easy. Can't make the self-inflicted penalties. We can't turn over the football like we have in the past. We can't survive those things, right? So we have to play clean on our side of the football, and we have to have a break. I said this. I was on an Oklahoma pod. I think comes out tomorrow. And one of the things I said is I want a game-changing style play within the first quarter, something that gets us a little bit of momentum. We need a tip pass for an interception, pop a fumble, God forbid an onside kick we recover. We need something of a momentum game-changing play, I think, in that first 15 minutes to kind of go our way, to get our confidence back and to start to believe that we can win games. I honestly think that's a bit of the challenge. The last 6 quarters for UCF have just been abysmal. I think there needs to be some positivity. So if we can find a way early on to strike, again, a big momentum, game-changing play, I think maybe you get a chance to hang in there and you give yourself a puncher's chance to win the game. And that's all you can ask for at this point is let us be competitive. Let us not beat ourselves. If Oklahoma's a better team, they beat us, then it is what it is. But let's not beat ourselves. And I think that's what we think that we've seen over the last couple of games for UCF.
Hey, maybe a wildcat play with a former quarterback turned running back throwing to a former wide receiver turned quarterback for a big touch.
What?
Yeah. Well, now Adam's just going to end the show right here. How about a defensive play by John Walker, 24/7 Sports midseason true freshman All-American team? Maybe a big disruptive play by him. Or
I'll take it.
Maybe something huge from the UCF offensive line, one of 23 teams in the nation on the Joe Moore midseason honor roll, best offensive line. By the way, he was a football coached offensive line and known for that. So thus the,
Makes sense.
honor. This one, a big one for UCF fans at Oklahoma. A lot going on in the Big 12 in the second half of the season. Let's hear from Jeff Allen.
With all eyes in Night Nation focused on the Dylan Gabriel Bowl, the other matchup featuring a ranked team in the Big 12 has number 8 Texas visiting Houston. The Cougars were able to land a home game against the outgoing SEC-bound Longhorns before their Big 12 departure. This is an old Southwestern Conference rivalry in which they played annually from 1976 to 1995. Post SWC, they had a 2-for-1 arrangement between 2000 and 2002. Texas leads the all-time series 16-7, and there have been 2 ties. Houston hopes to ride the momentum of their Hail Mary victory over West Virginia last week entering this matchup. This game will be a 4 o'clock kick Saturday on Fox. The rest of the schedule on Saturday includes Baylor at Cincinnati, 12 noon on ESPN+, West Virginia hosts Oklahoma State 3:30 on ESPN. Texas Tech travels to BYU 7 o'clock on FS1. Kansas State entertains TCU 7 o'clock on ESPN2. As far as the Knights go, with their high noon kickoff with the 6th-ranked Sooners on ABC, if JRP can play the whole way, I think the Knights will cover the high point spread. I do have concerns, though, when they say almost 100% with his health. I hope this is not a desperation move like playing him 2 weeks ago was. No matter what, Dylan Gabriel is poised to win against his former team. With your Big 12 minutes, I'm Jeff Allen.
It's a heartbreaker, Jeff.
Now, Coach Lounsbury left us a little bit encouraged about UCF on the road. Our next guest.
Well, here's an update. Hold on. Coach Lounsbury is still in the green room. He's turned the lights off, so he's sitting in the dark watching the show still. I don't know if that means the lights are back on now, which is good. I don't know if that means he's losing confidence or not, but I'll keep you posted. No, he's shaking his head. No, he's good still. Okay, he's good.
Well, I'm saying our next guest is going to discourage us. He is Keegan Renaud. He is part of 107.7, the franchise flagship for Oklahoma Athletics, also owner of RPM Sports Data and Analytics. Keegan, thanks for being with us on Sons of UCF Live.
Absolutely. I hope I sound good. I know we're doing this live, so hopefully everything's good. You can see a grocery bag in the back. I should probably have gotten that out of the way. But no, guys, I'm
what's
happy
in
to be here.
What's in the bag?
Well, they were it's some like 2-piece Oreo packages and like something like that from a wedding that happened recently that was given to me. So not my wedding. Nothing like that.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. We covered the big topics right off the top of this way. Oklahoma, number 6 in the country. Are they where you thought they'd be at this point in the season?
I think if anybody that would sit here and tell you that Oklahoma being in a driver's seat for a college football playoff bid after 6 games, it'd be fooling themselves a little bit. I think obviously they're definitely underperforming. They're definitely overperforming expectations. It's coming off the year that they had last year, right? Where it seemed like they found ways to lose football games. And whether you go to the West Virginia game, Baylor, you're up double digits. You're up by 14 or 17 on the road at Texas Tech at the end of the year. You find ways to lose all 3 of those football games. This year, obviously, has been completely different. You do have the road game in Cincinnati where Cincinnati did pick up, 4 or 5 drives there that got into scoring opportunities, still only getting 6 points. I do think that there is some, I'm sure you guys are going to ask about it, but I do think there are some things that happen in these first 6 games. You get a big win against Texas a couple weeks ago, but certainly there are some things where you're going up against an offense this week with John Rice Plumlee back. Probably the most team speed at the skill positions that Oklahoma is going to face all year with Hudson and Baker, and then the running back, and the last name's escaping me right now. But I think UCF, in terms of team speed at the skill positions, this will be a great test for Oklahoma's secondary and Oklahoma's discipline defensively, and see how they're able to kind of continue to build and grow. You have 2 games ago against Iowa State where Iowa State was able to catch them with some misdirection stuff, specifically the linebackers. I'm sure this is a game on Saturday where UCF is going to try to get Oklahoma's DBs and linebackers going in different directions and be able to capitalize on that.
How happy have you been with Dylan Gabriel? Obviously, he's put himself in a different category with the win against Texas.
It's one of those most interesting things, right? Because I think I studied every game that Dylan Gabriel played at UCF. And then obviously every game that happened last year, right? And I made the joke before last season that my comp for him was like watching Wild Thing in the movie Major League, right? Where one game, it looks like $1 million. The next game, there's this roller coaster ride. And I thought that it was like that at UCF. Obviously, the highs are really high. The lows were really low. And then you get to last year, and I thought it was somewhat of the same thing. I think this year the road game in Cincinnati was a little bit concerning from is he going to continue to be who he has been? And then he has really stacked 2 really good games back together, obviously against Iowa State, as you guys got to see when he went up against Cincinnati and that defense in the 3-3-5, struggled when he was at UCF, goes on the road at Tulsa, or both times he played Tulsa when he was at UCF, really struggled. And then he plays Iowa State here 2 games ago and never seen him play that well in an Oklahoma uniform. Probably the best he had played in an Oklahoma uniform. And then the environment. I know you guys are only going to get 1 year to really, view OU Texas as a conference game for the Big 12, but it's a different environment in that place. And it's going to be different than anything anybody ever does. And I thought he handled it really well, obviously with the big drive at the end. And I think Dillon Gabriel at this point is playing like a guy that if he can continue this consistency, he's going up against two defenses back-to-back with UCF and Kansas that are a little bit leaky from that perspective. Kansas more so than UCF, despite what happened in Lawrence. Still can't believe what happened in Lawrence 2 weekends ago or 3 weekends ago, whatever it was with UCF. But I think Gabriel is playing at a level right now where certainly I think he's deserving of the recognition he's getting. It's just a matter of continuing to play that way over the final 6 games. And again, I think you guys got to see it, and I think Oklahoma fans got to see it last year. It was a roller coaster ride there for really 15 games, but these last 2 games, he is starting to come on and play a lot like the expectation that was put on him when he transferred to Oklahoma.
Keegan subtly trying to hurt us with references to Tulsa.
I was going to say Tulsa and
I
Cincinnati
noticed
really
that.
hurt.
It hurt.
Really deep cuts, Keegan. I don't know if coaches at Oklahoma watch film, but if they have, they probably recognize that UCF run defense not very good. Describe the Oklahoma rushing attack. There's a lot of attention, obviously, on Dillon Gabriel, but what's this rushing attack like? We heard earlier from our previous guest, Oklahoma wants to run the football. Tell us more about the running game Oklahoma is going to bring into the game.
It's one of those, weird things about this game, right? Where UCF's run defense has been really poor, whether it's in rushing success allowed numbers, whether it's in, EPA per play allowed numbers. You go look at basically anything. It's not very good. But that is the one thing with Oklahoma's offense this year. The run game, specifically running back design runs. So Dillon Gabriel, I had posted earlier of the last couple of days, the rushing numbers look a lot better right now because they finally let Gabriel run a little bit against Texas, and we saw what happened. You guys obviously had Jeff Lebby there at UCF. Quarterback run game is a big part of what he does. He ran Matt Corral into the ground at Ole Miss his final season. And then obviously with Dillon Gabriel against Texas, the rushing numbers look a lot better because of the way the quarterback designed runs. The running back designed runs have not been very explosive. They've been somewhat successful getting those 4, 5, 6 yards on first down. This is one of those unique matchups in this game this week, guys, where Oklahoma's running game has not been like a big positive for them. It's been something that has kind of dragged on, specifically the running back design runs. And so if this is a week, and I think a lot of Oklahoma fans have pointed at this week, if there's a week to get Oklahoma's running game back on schedule, what it was a year ago with Eric Gray and those guys, this is one of those weeks too. But you have a 6-game data set at this point, right? You have a 6-game sample size where how can you sit here and say, okay, Oklahoma's run game is just going to take off this week, right? And obviously what I touched on this, but, you have 2 games ago for UCF or was it may have been last game? Obviously Kansas goes for almost 400 yards rushing. Like you see that and you go, okay, well, Oklahoma should be able to do that too. Like newsflash, Kansas run game is very complicated. Oklahoma's is not. And so will Oklahoma try to find themselves and probably establish the run game early? Certainly, but from your guys' perspective, I wouldn't sit here and say that Oklahoma's is going to line it up and be able to run, 8-10 yards a carry on Saturday. They just have not done that this year, even against some weaker defenses that they have played, whether it's Tulsa, whether it's even Arkansas State at times. It's been really weird to watch an Oklahoma run game for the first time that I've been doing this. I've really, really, really struggled.
Let's flip to the other side of the ball, Keegan. What's the strength of this Oklahoma defense?
Man, they're just playing team football. Like it's not to simplify it, but they do a really good job tackling this year opposed to last year. And I talked about it this week or early this week on a podcast. I think whenever you look at Oklahoma's defense, where you see their rushing, their efficiency numbers being so good in terms of not allowing a ton of explosive plays, forcing teams to stay off schedule, teams are not getting a lot of yards after contact, whether that's the receivers catching, short into the intermediate areas. Teams are not really picking up a ton of yards after contact, whether it's running backs, receivers. And I think that that's the one thing this year has really allowed them to have some success. As you guys saw against Texas, Cincinnati, whoever it may be, teams have been able to pick up some yards. And I hinted at that earlier. I think whenever you go to available yards allowed, with what Brian Freemal does over there with FEI, like Oklahoma is only in the 50s in available yards allowed. So they have been giving up some yards this year, which is somewhat concerning whenever you have a UCF offense and a Kansas offense back to back. That these are offenses that can finish some drives. Obviously, UCF's not as good at finishing drives as Kansas is, but that is the one thing with this defense this year where their tackling is so impressive and they're really physical. They don't allow teams to get a ton of explosives. When teams cross the 40-yard line, you guys, I know we're more recent followers here of each other, but heading in the Texas game, that was the biggest talking point, where Texas' inability to finish drives and Oklahoma's ability to basically stop teams in their tracks once they cross the plus 40. That is going to be a big part of this game on Saturday. If UCF gets in the red zone, they've got to be able to find ways to punch that thing in, not settle for field goals, and be able to keep this game within distance there to get into the second half.
If we put Oklahoma in the driver's seat to be in that Big 12 championship game, do you think a rematch with Texas is what is most likely at this point?
I think it is. I don't know, though, if either side's going to, be undefeated here in the final 6 games, right? Like whenever you go try to add up probability of wins here down the stretch, Texas obviously plays a much tougher schedule. I think that stretch that they have where I think they have TCU, Texas Tech, Iowa State. They have a stretch there where they have 4 games in Kansas State that are going to be pretty impressive in terms of teams that Texas is going to go up against, somewhat the upper echelon of the conference. Oklahoma obviously has a much weaker schedule. I think they do with UCF and Kansas offenses that are really good. There's going to be good tests for them, but obviously UCF defense and Kansas defense aren't nearly as good as what they have played so far in their conference slate with Cincinnati, Iowa State, and Texas. And so Bedlam obviously on the road. We'll see. You guys are going to get to face Oklahoma State this year at some point. You guys are going to find out their metrics never look good, but they somehow find ways to win football games. It doesn't make any sense. How they've won their last 2 games doesn't make any sense with Kansas State and Kansas. And that's a Gundy thing, with obviously the Bedlam record with Gundy only winning 3 times, I think in like 17 years or whatever it is. Doesn't typically bode well for them, but yeah, just a kind of too long didn't read version of that. I think Texas has a much tougher schedule. I think Texas can drop another game. I think Oklahoma definitely, these next 2 games with TCU to end the year, Bedlam on the road, obviously Oklahoma is going to be a more than 2 touchdown favorite in every game the rest of the way. But I don't think it's like a certainty that both these teams go undefeated. I think the bigger issue is, and why a rematch is more than likely, is who the hell is the 3rd best team in the Big 12? And is that 3rd best team going to go 7-2 in conference play? Probably not. So I think the pressure is on everybody else in the league to force Texas and Oklahoma to be a 2 or 3 loss team in this conference. And Texas probably is going to, even at 7-2, probably gets in the Big 12 title game.
What's your sense of the fan base on this last season in the Big 12? Going to miss the Big 12? I know there got to be people looking forward to the SEC, but they had a pretty good thing in the Big 12.
Yeah, if you put a true serum on Oklahoma fans, I think the traditional ones, the ones that have been, big fans or were students, been alumni with the Big 8 and Big 12, some of them, most of them will miss, playing some of these teams. I think Kansas State is one of those teams, or Oklahoma and Kansas State have had a great history of football games since 2000, since Bill Snyder and that age. But I mean, I think it's pretty get us to the SEC as fast as we possibly can. I not to demean anybody in the conference or anything, but whenever your home schedule's been what it's been for the last really 6 to 7 years, and then you look on the schedule and you have Tennessee, Alabama, and South Carolina coming to Norman next year, I think that there's a lot of excitement about what that home slate is going to look like. The home environments are going to be, and I don't think that's anything against the Big 12, which last year was the golden year for the conference, right? With how many good football teams that there is, going through a little bit of recycling. And I think you guys understand that, where teams that recruit at the level that the Big 12 schools recruit at, you go through these 3 or 4 year cycles where your teams are, you lose a lot, And then you start building that up, and then you're hoping year 3 or 4 you're competing for a conference title. I think that obviously this is that first year, guys, where the Big 12 lost so much NFL talent. I think it was the most, if I remember correctly, it was the most drafted players in the conference since 2011. And so that was a year ago. And when you have that sort of talent drain, obviously I think we're seeing that in the league this year, where Oklahoma and Texas, obviously you have a leg up on everybody. And the Kansas State's, losing on the road at Oklahoma State, which is just a shock. Kansas being one of the better teams in the conference, obviously. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I think Oklahoma is definitely ready to move to the SEC. And again, that home slate next year, I'm going to the LSU game on the road, right? So even as a guy that doesn't sit here and has pom-poms for OU or anything like that, I saw someone say, most reasonable OU fan. Luckily for me, I got to cover Lincoln Riley for 4 years. So it was very hard to root for that guy. Now that you guys are on the outside looking in at that, he kind of took it out of me. So thankfully I get to create content whether they win or lose. And that's the best part about it.
Keegan, a couple of quick ones. We always kind of crowdsource the hard-hitting questions. 3 best bars in Norman.
Believe it or not, Oklahoma, Norman, doesn't have the best campus bar area. They're trying to really, a little peek behind the curtain. I think you're going to see some renovations done around it's called Campus Corner, historic Campus Corner. Obviously been around for forever. It's pretty small. It's about a block. So it's not like, Manhattan or Stillwater when UCF goes there. It's really not the best, bar scene, I think, in terms of on campus or right around the campus. The unique thing, and a lot of people just don't think about, in the UCF fans that are traveling there, Oklahoma City is only 25 minutes away. And so a lot of people will go to Oklahoma City the night before. And some people will stay in Norman and enjoy the college bars, but if you're going to go and you're in Norman for this game, just know that the bar scene is strictly college students around campus. So
you're saying I'm going to stand out there on Friday night? That's basically, especially with
you're
the
in
UCF
the older crowd. There's a bar called Valera that has a little bit of that.
Well, Keegan with the Tulsa reference and then that jab, but we've been glad to have you anyway.
Yeah, best place to tailgate, really quickly.
Yeah, it's awesome. So if you guys most people will be flying in, you're going to see the stadium from a good distance away. It's right in the heart of campus. All the tailgating's right around the stadium. Great. It's one of my favorite atmospheres in college football, around the stadium on game day. Obviously inside the stadium as well, but the tailgating scene's improving. I think you've seen a lot of the Oklahoma fans say the tailgating scene has to get better with the SEC on deck. That's certainly true. I think that this is Oklahoma's not SEC ready from a tailgating perspective, but around the stadium is definitely going to be a great place to be if you're going to be there on game day.
Keegan, you're really downplaying this experience. I know our fans, other than perhaps the game itself, are going to enjoy their time.
When you get in the stadium, you guys will really enjoy it. It's an awesome environment. I love going to games still whenever I'm able to be in the stands. The buzz around, there's so many people down there, right? I mean, obviously the stadium sits 90,000 or right around 90,000 people, 87, I think at this point. So there's going to be, 120,000 people down there around the stadium on game day. So the buzz is great. But definitely if you're thinking that you're just going to show up for a tailgating event that is just going to be something you've never seen, that's not necessarily true. They're trying to improve that from a university perspective as the SEC's on deck, but I wouldn't sit here and say the tailgating scene. It is nothing whenever UCF goes on the road to Stillwater. For anybody that's watching or listening to this, go to that game, enjoy the weekend, because it is a whole different animal up there in Stillwater from a tailgating perspective, and not game day experience, but the scene around this for tailgating is incredible up there in Stillwater.
Good insights. Keegan, we appreciate you being with us.
Absolutely. You guys enjoy it. For everybody making their trip to Norman, safe travels.
Thank you much.
Thanks, Keegan.
All right, he's downplaying the tailgating scene. I don't believe it. 90,000 fans. Come on.
I think my favorite part is he said, believe it or not a lot going on in Norman. I believe that, actually. That wasn't really something I was confused.
For a second, UCF Mike popped into the show to give us the Norman report. Let's check in with some news and notes before we get to the mailbag.
Shamari Allen, point guard. Let's go around the kingdom.
Yeah, good tie-in. Interview with Shamari Allen, now available on the Sons of UCF YouTube.
Is that right?
I like how you did that. Second-ranked men's soccer, number 2. Second-ranked men's soccer crushes Coastal Carolina on Wednesday night, 5-0. Combined with a Marshall loss, now UCF still got South Carolina on the road Sunday. Could be next week. If they get that win at South Carolina, Knights may be. I don't even want it.
Yeah, don't jinx this. Don't jinx
I don't
this.
want it. But Sunday, 6 o'clock at South Carolina, a big one for the Knights. 24th ranked volleyball now in the polls. Tough ones now at 21st ranked Baylor. That is Saturday at 3, Sunday at 1. This is a top 25 matchup. I know people have been saying, "Oh, you got to cover the volleyball more. You're being dismissive." I'm not being dismissive. They're 16-2, 7-0 in the Big 12. They've got a lot of tough matches coming up. They don't have to win them all, but that 20-win number is a good number to shoot for down the stretch for the Knights. So more wins down the stretch. Robert, 2 letters, 2 words. Planning to make the
you seem a little defensive there. You okay?
No.
Okay.
I'm just saying. Let's see him get through the toughest part of the schedule now. Before we,
Mike, is that you?
The Big 12. No. Women's soccer, they're off. They've got Monday, October 23rd at 7th-ranked BYU. Tough test on the road for women's soccer. And 27th-ranked women's golf, 2nd consecutive tourney title, winning in Knoxville. Freshman Molly Smith wins her first collegiate victory. I mentioned, name-dropped a couple of times around the kingdom. Good spirited discussion with Eric Lopez this week.
I think a lot of UCF fans would be thrilled. This is it. This is the biggest game. This is bigger than any potential bowl game if UCF plays in a bowl game.
This is the bowl game.
This is the bowl game. I agree. If they were to beat Oklahoma, I would argue now this is the biggest upset win in UCF football program history in the Division I era.
Concur, Adam? What do you think?
Probably. I'm actually just glad we talked about golf because there's some guy on Twitter that yells at us every time that we don't mention golf. So I'm glad we talked about it.
That's why I threw it in there.
I'm glad we talked about golf because that guy yells at me a lot for not talking about golf. So, I think this would be, right? You look at regular season wins, Louisville's our biggest win from a ranked perspective. This would be up there. I think this would be up there. I'm willing to play recency bias and give this the top spot.
Now up on sonsofUCF.com, columns by Dolly Drama, another good one, and as well from Brian W. Peterson, who we feature every week right about now.
It's that time again. Time to open the Brian W. Peterson Sons of UCF mailbag.
And a happy belated birthday to Brian Peterson.
Yes, happy birthday. Emily Bannister as well. A couple of people with birthdays this week that are part of Night Nation and Sons of UCF. Mailbag at Riley Carey 16. Should men's soccer be ranked number 1 due to the performances they had lately? Got to win that game in South Carolina on Sunday, and they may find themselves in that position. All right, late ads here from at UCF Guy 23. Question 1. He's asking if UCF men's soccer wins, should we start a fundraiser to buy up all the remaining tickets for the last home game? Yeah, nothing's stopping you. Well, you're asking me. What do you want me to organize a GoFundMe? I'm not doing that. But I do like the next question. Would Adam and his soccer family, or even Mike, has he ever watched this show? Mike, make a trip with Trace to the soccer stadium if we're hosting a game in the Final Four of men's soccer. There's so many things have got to happen here. Or would Son send Trace to the College Cup December 8th and 11th at Louisville? I like that one right there. Forget this fundraiser to sell tickets for men's soccer. How about send me to Louisville to cover soccer cup?
I wouldn't mind going to the soccer. I don't like Louisville just as a general principle of life. So if that's where it's at, that could be a deal breaker for me. But I wouldn't mind if we're going to be in a Final Four. I don't know how often that's going to happen in our UCF life. I wouldn't mind being a part of that. I do love soccer, so you could twist my arm into that.
What about the part about sending me?
Someone has to drive us, right?
At Mr. Matt Dolan. Genie in a bottle can make UCF 6-0 right now, but lose in Norman or stay at 3-3, but the Genie guarantees a win Saturday. What do you choose, Adam?
Give me the 6-0, but a loss at Oklahoma.
6-0, but a loss at Oklahoma, which would have meant that Baylor thing never would have happened.
Never happened. No.
Brian, did UCF ask for a noon homecoming kickoff against West Virginia on purpose to get the bad taste of losing by 5+ scores to Oklahoma out of the way as quickly as possible?
No, I have exclusive information about this.
Yes.
This actually is a byproduct of Trace Trelko because Orlando City might have a playoff game that night. He wants to go to both. So we all know the power that Trace carries at UCF.
Yeah,
he went over and said, listen, Timo, do me a solid. We'll play at noon. I'll get to soccer later. So that's really what happened here.
I did mention it to him when we flew on the same flight back from Kansas.
Whoa, I need to know about what's this about here?
Yeah, that's a whole different. What is this?
Okay.
I don't want to know that. Let's just skip that.
Okay.
UCF XOS. Andy, how you planning to celebrate UCF's big road win in Norman? Well, not in any of the Norman bars, apparently. Drive back to Oklahoma City and celebrate there. Emptiness 4. Michael, JRP named starter, but not yet 100%. Is it worth? By the way, you like Gus? Gus, I was hoping he'd be at 90%. Did you hear that little part? I was hoping he'd be at.
I mean, I don't like risking JRP's health for a game here, but I mean, Coach Lonsberry told us that JRP looks good. Gus is saying he looks good, so I'm gonna trust those two, and that JRP is as close as he's gonna be to healthy at this point. Who's really healthy 7 games into a college football season anyway? You have bumps and bruises, so my assumption, my hope is that JRP is as healthy as everybody else is, and we'll see that on Saturday.
At Ilan Bahar 4, at what point do seasonal quarterback injuries become a system byproduct versus bad luck? What's the saying? Once is an occurrence, twice a coincidence, thrice a trend. We got some quarterback questions here. At Brian_Campbell 1, do you think it's time to move off the RPO quarterback? At Grillin, I like to include you, but dude, you got to calm down a little bit on Twitter. Grillin24Q. Anyone notice the theme, UCF injuries, what you just mentioned here? Program still to a point where it hinges on 1 to 2 guys. I think you hit on something though there that the depth is not quite where it needs to be. What do you think on these plethora of quarterback questions?
Yeah.
Just injuries. You questioned injuries, not specifically the strength and conditioning program, but just injuries in general.
I mean, 3 separate questions, right? I mean, we've had quarterback injuries, but they haven't always been under the same staff, right? Like McKenzie's injury was obviously under Heupel. I think Dylan's injury at Louisville was kind of a freak situation, right? I don't know that's a system-based injury. And look, JRP, we've talked about it for 2 years. He puts himself in harm's way by the style he plays with. So I don't know that I can blame that on any one thing. If you told me our quarterback could run less and he'd get hurt less, would I sign up for that? Sure. But the running element is such a big part of football. It's such a big part of what JRP does that it kind of changes the narrative. So the second question is, we still need to be an RPO team? Now that one I'm in for. If you told me we could throw the ball downfield a little bit more and have a little bit more of a passing style of offense with a quarterback who can get out and run and make some plays, I'd be in for that. But it's tough to say it's a system thing when we've seen injuries under multiple different systems here at UCF.
Saddest Rockers, I think I always mess up the saying of that. Thoughts on using Alec Holler on defense and coverage in hopes DG has a momentary flashback and throws to one.
Can he play linebacker? If you play linebacker, I'll take him.
Serious one here. At Black_Gold_ in a UCF marketing class that he says he took some years ago, the professor said it takes decades to build a brand, only an hour to lose it. As the brand equity UCF football built in 2017, leading up to joining the Big 12, being wiped out. It's eroding.
Yes.
It's eroding.
I don't think it's totally wiped out, but I think it's, it was that middle 20s good-looking person who is now in their 30s and some wrinkles are creeping in and a little extra belly fat's coming in there and the Ozempic prescription hasn't hit yet. I think that's where you're at with UCF. I don't think it's completely gone.
Several people watching this very program right now.
Maybe myself, in fact. So I don't think it's eroded, but I don't think it's gone. But I think it's eroding, to your point. That's a good word.
Yeah, the future of college football. At Zeebles UCF, three questions. I left out the third one. We'll skip to the third one. What are your thoughts on candy corn? Bad on that one. But I'll go to his other two.
Not a fan.
Auburn paid Gus $21 million to leave. UCF would need to pony up $15 million to get out from under the Gus bus. Is Gus the greatest flim-flam man in college football? Or does he just have the Michael Jordan of agents? He's got a hell of an agent.
Jimmy Sexton is his agent. Jimmy Sexton is well known. Google him.
Yeah. His second question: should Timo resign after the OU loss, or wait until the West Virginia loss? He's not going anywhere either. We gotta stop talking about getting rid of the AD and getting rid of the coach. They're not going anywhere. At Daniel R. Leonard, what influence does an AD have on the performance of the football team? Rodgers has been here less than 3 years. People want him fired. Makes no sense to me. I will just say at this point, they're linked. right? He hired Gus Malzahn. He's extended Gus Malzahn. As Gus goes, Timo's reputation is going to go in the eyes of UCF fans.
I put it this way: for whatever your job is right now out there, and if you're not doing well at it, how much of it can you blame on your boss? I think it's going to vary by industry. Sure, he sets the budgets. Sure, he schedules the games, right? But at some point, you own your own execution. So while you can blame a piece on your boss, typically, a lot of times that's a look in the mirror moment.
At Frosty Junction, what do we know about baseball? Got any predictions over under on not finishing last in basketball? I have not really paid a lot of attention to baseball. Black and gold games are going on over the weekend. We'll talk a little bit about basketball as we get a little bit closer. We're dropping those Q&A, the Media Day interviews on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Anything other than not last will be a victory. Jay Grubbs asking about volleyball. Big volleyball fan is Mr. Grubbs.
I've seen that, yeah.
To know that the venue needs to be packed. The venue has had a great atmosphere for volleyball, and as I've watched these matches that UCF has played on the road, UCF atmosphere just is better than anything I've seen so far. Baylor, we'll see what it looks like this weekend. At MLaw 1848 Air Show in town this the weekend in Sanford, or we're getting a homecoming flyover. What time's this game? Noon. What time's Shaq going to be out there? 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. Who do you think? It's Jimmy Skiles, right? It was on duty of waking Shaq up, picking him up.
Omelets with Shaq is really what we're doing on homecoming.
You got to get Shaq. Rejoice Knights, is it me or does Gus look like he's aged 10 years this season? Nah.
Well, he came in with that dyed hair, and now he's kind of gone Florida man. So I can see why you'd think that, but I think that's a strategic look on his part.
At Scott M. Star, if UCF doesn't get the numerical win in Norman, what would be considered a win, or at least a move in the right direction? I'm not talking about moral victories, or maybe I am. I do think we're in a moral victory point with a 3-game losing streak that none of us expect them to come out of there with a win. Maybe Coach Lounsbury's giving us a little bit of hope, but
yeah, he's shaking his head again. I don't want moral victories. I don't want to lose to ourselves. If Oklahoma beats us, that's fine. I feel like we've lost to ourselves the last couple of games. If Oklahoma beats us and they make good plays and they're faster, stronger, whatever, then it is what it is. We lick our wounds, we go back to it. As long as we don't beat ourselves, I'll be okay, but I'm not a moral victory fan.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Safe travels to everybody. I will be heading out to Oklahoma on Friday. I hope to see many of you out Oklahoma City, maybe, or Norman, in bars apparently I have aged out of, but may swing by anyway. If UCF Problems is out at a bar, I'm going to hang out with him. I know he's going on this trip. So thank Coach Lounsbury. Thank Keegan for joining us with the Tulsa references. Adam, thank you for all of your help, as always. And thank you, Night Nation, for tuning in and being a part of Sons of UCF Live. For Adam Eaton, I'm Trace Strelko. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Hey guys, I'm Pupa Warakunakro, and I'm UCF men's basketball guard. And thank you for watching Sons of UCF.
Repeat that name, Trace.
Pooh.